Okay, let's get into this. Think about your day for a second. Did you know that around 40% of the actions you take every single day aren't actually conscious decisions, they're habits? From how you brush your teeth to that impulse to check your phone, you're basically running on autopilot. But what is this hidden code that drives so much of what we do? And maybe more importantly, how can we learn to rewrite it?
To crack that code, we first have to solve a bit of a medical mystery. And it all starts with a simple and what seems like an impossible question. How can someone who can't even remember what he did a minute ago still learn a brand new, complex routine?
Well, the answer lies in the incredible case of a man named Eugene Pauly, whose condition completely changed how we understand the brain when it's on autopilot.
So, back in 1993, Eugene was hit by a virus that essentially destroyed a part of his brain called the medial temporal lobe. The result was just catastrophic. His memory was wiped, he couldn't tell you the day of the week, what year it was, or what he'd just eaten for breakfast. His own life was a complete blank.
But here's where it gets weird. Eugene's wife noticed something. Every morning, they'd go for a walk around their block. Now, even though Eugene couldn't draw you a map of his street or even point to his own house, if he just started walking, he found his way back home, every single time. He had formed a new habit with absolutely no memory of ever doing it before. How on earth is that possible? While scientists figured it out, the answer wasn't in his memory at all. You see, habits are stored in a totally different, much more ancient part of the brain, the basal ganglia. You can think of it as your brain's own little autopilot system. So while Eugene's memory center was gone, his basal ganglia was working just fine, letting him build new routines without him ever knowing how he learned them. So that discovery told us where habits live in the brain. But the next big question was, well, how? How does the brain actually build these automatic routines? What's the recipe for a habit?
Researchers at MIT found the answer by, you guessed it, putting rats in a maze. At first, when a rat was exploring a new maze, its brain was firing on all cylinders, working like crazy. But the moment it learned the path to the chocolate, its mental activity dropped, like way down. The brain had basically said, okay, I got this, and chunked that whole sequence of actions into an automatic routine. And in that process, they found the code. They called it the habit loop. It's a simple, incredibly powerful, three-part process that is the fundamental building block of every single habit you have, from biting your nails to that morning coffee you can't live without.
Let's break it down. First, there's a cue. This is the trigger. It could be a time of day, a place, a feeling, anything that tells your brain to kick into autopilot. Then comes the routine, which is the habit itself. And finally, you get the reward, which is that little hit of something good that tells your brain, hey, let's remember this loop for next time. And you can see that cycle right here. Cue, routine, reward. Over time, this loop gets stronger and more automatic. Your brain starts to connect the cue with the reward, and then something powerful emerges. Craving. You start to anticipate that reward, and that is what really powers the habit loop. So how does this whole thing play out in the real world? Well, let's look at one of the most successful habit creation stories of all time. Early in the 20th century, this brilliant ad man, Claude Hopkins, was hired to sell Pepsodent toothpaste, but he had a massive problem. Back then, America's dental hygiene was, let's just say, not great. Almost nobody had the habit of brushing their teeth. Hopkins had to create a national habit from pretty much nothing. He knew he needed to find a clear cue, define a satisfying reward, and somehow tap into that all-important ingredient, craving.
And this is where it gets really brilliant. For the cue, Hopkins focused on something that everyone has but nobody ever really noticed, that natural film on your teeth. His ads made people suddenly super aware of it. The routine, of course, was to brush with Pepsodent. But the absolute genius was the reward. See, Pepsodent had ingredients like mint oil in it. They didn't actually do anything to clean your teeth better, but they created this cool tingling sensation. That tingle became the signal for clean. People started to miss that feeling if they skipped brushing. They started to crave the reward. And just like that, a national habit was born.
So, understanding the habit loop is one thing. But what about changing a bad habit? Something like smoking or overeating? Well, it turns out you can't just erase it. You have to replace it.
This is what's known as the golden rule of habit change. The neurological pathways for your bad habits, they're always going to be there in your brain. You can't just wish them away. But you can hijack the loop.
And the rule is beautifully simple. If you want to change a habit, you have to keep the old cue and you have to deliver the old reward, but you've got to insert a new routine right in the middle.
You're basically paving a new road right over the old one.
Coach Tony Dungy used this exact rule to turn the struggling Tampa Bay Buccaneers into Super Bowl champions. The cues were the same, the offense lines up. The rewards were the same, gaining yards and winning. All he did was replace their complex, slow-thinking routines with a handful of simple, automatic reactions that they drilled over and over again. He changed their habits, and that changed everything.
Now, some habits are just more powerful than others. They don't just change one little behavior, they set off a chain reaction that can remake entire organizations or even your own life. These are called Keystone habits.
Picture this. It's 1987. Paul O'Neill just became the CEO of the aluminum giant Alcoa. He stands up for his first meeting with Wall Street investors. They're all expecting to hear about profits and cutting costs. Instead, O'Neill says this. The room went dead silent. One investor literally ran out to call his clients and said, the board put a crazy hippie in charge and he's going to kill the company.
But O'Neill understood the immense power of a keystone habit. He knew that certain core habits can create small wins that build momentum, establish new cultures, and make widespread change feel not just possible, but inevitable.
O'Neill's obsessive goal of 0 injuries forced the entire company to transform itself. To improve safety, communication between workers and managers had to get better. Manufacturing processes had to be completely redesigned to prevent failures. This single-minded focus on safety created this amazing ripple effect, forcing excellence in dozens of other areas.
And the result of all this? By the time O'Neill retired, Alcoa's injury rate was 1/20th of the U.S. average. Oh, and that crazy hippie who was supposedly going to tank the company? He had increased Alcoa's net income 5-fold. That one keystone habit of worker safety had made it one of the top-performing stocks in the world.
So, this brings all these ideas, the brain on autopilot, the habit loop, the golden rule, and these powerful keystone habits, it brings it all back to us, to you. The science is totally clear. Habits can be understood, and they can absolutely be changed.
Studies show that keystone habits, things like making your bed every morning, exercising regularly, or just tracking what you eat, they don't just change that one thing. They ripple out, creating positive change in your productivity, your finances, even your happiness. So the final question is, what's the one habit that could start a positive chain reaction for you? One small change can remake your entire life. What will yours be?